When the British departed Sri Lanka, then known as Ceylon, after granting it independence in 1948, the island certainly seemed ready for self-rule, having enjoyed universal franchise since 1931. In fact, when the British Institute of Race Relations proposed a documentary about the island in 1948, it could find nothing more sensational than calling it Ceylon, Island Without Problems. But within 25 years, civil war had erupted, pitting the island's Tamils against the Sri Lankan state. This armed conflict was to consume tens of thousands of lives. In the first part of this three-part presentation, we look at the events that led to the armed conflict. Part 1. In 1947, as Sri Lanka, then Ceylon, awaited independence from British rule, a sense of hope and concern permeated the Sinhala nation. Tamils, a numerically smaller nation, confined to the northern and eastern provinces of the island, were worried about their future in a state dominated by the Sinhalese, a numerically larger nation occupying the rest of the island. They saw the unitary constitution bestowing too much power in the hands of the majority as flawed democracy, likening it to a case of two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. G. Ponnambalam, the leader of the main Tamil political party, the All Ceylon Tamil Congress, sought to counter majoritarian rule by demanding weighted representation. Ponnambalam proposed an arrangement to confine the Sinhala people to 50% of the seats in parliament and the balance to the rest of the population. The proposal is dubbed 50-50, was roundly denounced by the Sinhala political leadership. The Sinhala Prime Minister-elect, D.S. Senanayake, then posed a rhetorical question: do you want to be governed from London, or do you want, as Ceylonese, to help govern Ceylon? The Tamils interpreted this as an opportunity for their inclusion in the government. Reassured, Tamils indicated their support, and the leader of the Tamil Congress, G. Ponnambalam, agreed to join the government. In 1948, Sri Lanka gained independence, marking a momentous occasion. However, the newly formed government promptly disenfranchised ethnic Tamils of recent Indian descent through the Citizenship Act. These Tamils, brought to Sri Lanka by the British to work on tea plantations, found themselves stripped of their rights. In one swift move, the Sinhala polity had further improved its hold on the levers of power, as almost 1 million Tamil people lost their citizenship and voting rights. Several senior members of the Tamil Congress Party quit the party, which was in coalition with the government, in protest. S.J.V. Chelvanayakam, Ponnambalam's deputy, was one of them. Chelvanayakam, who had opposed the government's treatment of the plantation Tamils, realized that they, Tamils of the northeast, would be the next to be targeted. He called for a federal form of government for the country that would potentially enable the Tamils in the northeast a measure of self-government. In 1956, Solomon Bandaranaike, a Sinhala politician, took up the cry of Sinhala only, promising to make Sinhalese the only official language of the country. It was a cry backed by the powerful Buddhist clergy and enabled Bandaranaike to capture political power and become the country's prime minister. This Sinhala-only Act was passed in 1956, marginalizing the Tamil community. Peaceful Tamil protests were met with violence, often incited by Sinhala mobs led by Buddhist clergy. An agreement reached with the Tamil leadership in 1957 had to be rescinded in the face of opposition by the Buddhist clergy. The year 1958 witnessed horrific pogroms targeting Tamils in an attempt to suppress their aspirations and protests. The scale of the violence caused Tazi Vitachi, a Sinhala journalist and author of Emergency 58 Feet to ponder: have the Sinhalese and Tamils reached the parting of the ways? The 1960s witnessed increasing protests by the Tamils and futile attempts by their leaders to negotiate self-rule for the Tamil provinces. Another pact signed between the government and Tamils in 1965 was also dishonored in the face of opposition led by Buddhist clergy. It had now become the practice for the party in opposition to oppose any concessions to the Tamils, making it impossible for the party in government to concede any rights to the Tamils. In 1971, the government introduced a scheme that required Tamil students to score higher marks to enter universities under a scheme identified as standardization. In 1972 and 1978, new constitutions consolidated majoritarian rule, exacerbating the grievances of the Tamil population. In 1975, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, LTTE, emerged, drawing its numbers from students impacted by Sri Lanka's standardization policy with respect to university entrance. LTTE's leader was a former member of the Student Federation, Vela Pillai Pirapaharan. In 1977, the Tamil parties now united under a coalition called the Tamil National Liberation Front, TULF. contested the general elections on the platform of restoring Tamil sovereignty. The TULF's call for restoring Tamil sovereignty resonated with the people in the 1977 general elections, and they voted overwhelmingly for independence. Anti-Tamil violence following the election is attributed to the Tamil demand for independence. The attacks result in the lives of hundreds of Tamils. Many flee to their homeland in the northeast. The LTTE, committed to the same goal albeit through the force of arms, was proscribed as an illegal organization in 1978. In 1981, the Sri Lankan army unleashed violence in Jaffna, culminating in the devastating burning of the Jaffna Public Library. This act of cultural genocide, spearheaded by ministers Anura Dissanayake and Cyril Matthew, further intensified tensions. In 1983, the LTTE launched its first guerrilla-style ambush, killing 13 soldiers. In response, the Sri Lankan state orchestrated violent attacks on Tamil people and their property, leading to the deaths of thousands and the displacement of approximately 150,000 Tamil refugees who sought shelter in India. Tamils are forced to flee or fight. War breaks out in Sri Lanka between the Sinhala-dominated state and the Tamil people. In Part 2, it will be seen how the international actors have exploited the conflict to further their own interests.